Hello and welcome to Brickwork Ratings, yet another podcast series. Today we have a very eminent guest with us, Asim Dhru, CEO and MD of SBFC Finance. Sir, I would like to first welcome you to this session. And also I would like you to introduce you and your firm so that our audience can be well aware about the whole startup and the initiative you have taken up.
Yeah, thank you, Brickworks, and thank you, Ria, for having me. Hello and welcome everyone to this little podcast. Uh, I represent SPFC, which is a small business finance company. We are, and we basically finance micro enterprises, small businesses all across the country, which could be from small departmental stores, garages, salons, various small businesses that one sees across the country. As we know, India is a nation of shopkeepers and small businesses, and we have got almost 63 million odd small businesses, and not more than 8% of them have access to any kind of organized finance. So SBFC was started 3 years back with a dream of reaching out to this particular segment of customers, mainly into interior towns of India. So right now, SBFC has about a portfolio of about $500 million, and we are 100 branches in about 17 states, and we are there in about 68 odd towns in the country, and slowly expanding our reach. So that's a little bit about us.
Nice. Sir, as you already spoke, looking at the SBFC's focus on the micro enterprises and trying to reach out that niche corner of the economy wherein maybe banking facilities are not yet very nicely available. So I would like to understand what is your take on this sector over the medium term, looking at the impact of the situation, the pandemic which we are dealing with, and how is your expectation on the credit offtake for the sector?
So the first thing is that these businesses evolve in a country depending on what is the ethos of its population. In India, usually the problem is that we are an economy that is has a problem with anything bottle sized. We are an economy where things sell sachet size. So when everything is small in smaller quantity, because the purchasing power of our population continues to be widely challenged. So apart from a few rich and few affluent segments, the rest of the segments have a lot of issues in terms of their ability to purchase commodities, which is why we have a lot of small shops and small businesses, unlike the large format stores that one sees in the West, which is an economy that has evolved differently. So small businesses in India service a particular niche and a particular need of the economy, and therefore they have been something that have been resilient through the cycles. So even if you go to pre-independence India, you would see that we had a lots of small businesses, and over 70 years of independence, those businesses continue to become slightly larger, but they continue to remain small and they continue to grow in number, and they have been highly resilient. When demonetization happened, one believed that now this is going to be a difficult segment for this particular class of customers, but the reality is that they manage that as well. So this segment is very resilient and manages to get by. The one of the reasons they do it is because largely the businesses run out of their own funds. These businesses are not highly leveraged. They do not really borrow too much from the market. Most of them, 92% of them, have no borrowings. So they're actually running it from completely their own funds or from trade credit. Only 8% of them are organized and have any form of credit. Now, what has happened is that post the pandemic coming in, there will be two kinds of businesses. There will be businesses which are lockdown affected and businesses which are pandemic affected. Lockdown affected businesses when things reopen, they will slowly climb back to some kind of normalcy. We're already seeing that in most cities in the country, where businesses have returned to 60-70% of what they were before the COVID lockdown. So most of the businesses will slowly return to normal. Some businesses which are badly affected segmentally, which are affected by COVID and permanently damaged for a long time, they will have a longer struggle ahead of them. But on the large, the economies, as the economy bounces back, these businesses will come back. Secondly, the Reserve Bank of India has taken a lot of measures which will help these businesses ride through this cycle. One, a 6-month moratorium period ensured that at least the initial shock was absorbed. So that moratorium acted like a shock absorber. And we are seeing that customers have been prudent. Even those who took moratorium 1, first of all, not everyone took moratorium 1. More than 30% of customers did not take moratorium 1, and also 70% customers always paid up. 30% customers took moratorium 1, And from there, the slide is on its way down. So, a month on month across the industry, we are seeing that customers are now coming back to some kind of normalcy. And September, when the moratorium goes off, they will have a softer landing and a restart. Secondly, the emergency credit line program that has been rolled out offers on the after the moratorium ends, it offers a bit of cash flows to the customers because 20% more credit can be delivered to this segment. So it offers more opportunity to these small businesses to restock, restart, and readjust to what is going to be a new normal in their particular segment. So yes, there is going to be pain. Yes, there is going to be a lot of adjustments, but large parts of the businesses will bounce back. Human beings are resilient. Small businesses are highly resilient. So I expect that come April, we should be in a reasonably more normal environment.
Well, talking about the packages which the government has introduced, especially for MSMEs, the basic sector where you are catering to, are is that 3 crore package which is introduced for MSMEs, is that sufficient to fulfill the liquidity requirements at the moment and support the sector to this current environment? And maybe are there any measures which you are expecting from the government to pace up this recovery phase?
So there have been three measures broadly. First was the moratorium. The second was the emergency credit line of 3 lakh crores. Now, what this actually does is that 3 trillion is not meant for a permanent sort of a credit facility to these customers. This is an emergency credit line, as it says, and it gives enough working capital because 20% of your borrowing, as a top up, is a sufficient enough amount for you to restart and recalibrate your business operations unless things have got totally destroyed. But if you have just lockdown affected, you would be able to at least bounce back with this kind of money, because what it is doing is that ultimately businesses have to bounce back of their own cash flows. Business permanent supports cannot be given to any business, but till the business bounces back of their own cash flows, this is a emergency measure available so that people don't do layoffs. They're able to support salaries, etc. So world over, whether it is the United States, which had a payroll protection program, to Germany, to we don't have the fiscal room to carry out what those countries carried out. We do not have a printing press in the basement. They all borrow in their own currency. So we have limitations. Our fiscal deficit is already at a very high level if you consider center and state. So there were limited measures available to the government. But what this does is it provides an immediate relief and a hope for the businesses to come back to their usual working capital cycle. And thirdly, they've also allowed restructuring of SME advances, which was a circular that was already there, which had expired in December 19. That has been extended effectively. So now even restructuring is possible, where you can sit down with a borrower and give him 2 more years to service back that obligation that you already had, thereby reducing the EMI burden. And to that extent, also helping him ensure that the burden of EMI comes off, just as his cash flows also are struggling a bit. So between all these measures, I think the government has done what is sufficient, but may not be able to do everything that is necessary. They also have limitations in terms of what they can realistically do.
Right. So talking about how you mentioned that government has tried to provide that liquidity, and even the MSMEs who have been pretty good. Only the lockdown effect has been there, so they'll be very easily able to bounce back. So talking about those sanctions which the government has already given, we have seen robust sanctions, maybe more than 1 lakh crore is what the data says. However, disbursements have been slow. What is the particular reason about it? Is it because maybe the economic activities have slowed down, and so the companies are not utilizing the funds? Or is there any other reason which you think, probably why these money is not being utilized?
So first of all, in a very short time frame, 1.3 trillion has been actually handed out, which is sanctions, which is a large amount of sanctions. Because remember, these are all very small businesses all across the country, and now very wisely, the government has also extended it to the individuals as well, which are not covered in the previous sector. So there are two parts to it. One is that the 20% limit may not be what everyone needs instantly. So people take the facility, but they also use it prudently. Ultimately, it is a loan that they are servicing, and they may not, if they don't need the entire amount, why should they completely draw it down? They can draw it down when they really need it. So the customers are also prudent. Just because you give them credit, they will not take credit of take unless they really need it. And secondly, the working capital cycle is right now stuck where some customers debtors are still not paying back because effectively a lot of businesses have not yet opened. Because mind you, what has happened is that the metro cities are struggling more. The interior parts of India are doing much better. So the businesses in the metros, because today if you look at Bombay, for example, it is not yet open. Until local trains start, Bombay is not yet functional. So to that extent, there is a lot of pain that if a customer has a shop in Prabhadevi, but he lives in Dombivli, how is he going to even make it to the shop? So on a daily basis. So effectively, a lot of businesses have still not opened up. Data cycles have not yet returned to normals. Customers have not yet completely returned into the markets. So there is a at the moment the requirement of funds will also be in line with the amount of turnover the customer is seeing. So it will happen eventually. Offtake will also happen, but sanctions will always be ahead of disbursals. And usually in any overdraft facilities, as a banker, one sees that 60 to 80% utilization is healthy. 100% utilization actually is not healthy.
Right. Sir, also talking about the slowdown which has come due to this pandemic, I just wanted to understand what is your expectation on the asset quality of the MSMEs over the near to medium term? How do you see that?
So one has to see how we went into the crisis. We did not go into the crisis in a very happy note to start with. We were faced with a slowing GDP. We were faced with a slowing economy. We were faced with rising unemployment. We were faced with rising NPAs even before we went into the lockdown. So one is that we have entered the crisis pretty weak, and with this, the issues will get exacerbated to a great extent. And the banking system. I mean, depending on how we're looking at things right now, the banking system, RBI believes that right now the bad assets, which are about 9% odd, will move up to 12.5%, or thereabouts with this pandemic. But we may want to brace for something bigger than that. And my personal sense is that we should be testing 14-15% levels, which would be a little concerning for the system. However, the restructuring that has been allowed will go a long way to help. But these cycles have yet to play out. First of all, we don't even know where we are in this cycle. The pandemic is not yet over. The numbers in India continue to rise, so we are not fully functional and fully out of the problem. We first need to be out of the problem, and then we need to restart. But we are going to see softness, and we are likely to see slippages increase. And if you've seen the results of most banks and most NBFCs, they've already prepared for this. So in terms of special COVID provisioning that each one has taken, is taken with a view to ensure that there is no shock at the end of it. So to a great extent, I think people have wisely provided, and this will go a long way in ensuring that the pain in the balance sheet has largely been taken.
So basically, you want to, in short, you want to say that maybe the collections and the recovery mechanism would be very smooth, since they have already provisioned a bigger amount for all the pain which they are seeing ahead, right?
Yes, because it was very apparent. Economies are complex engines. They are elephants. Once they sit down, it's very tough to get them up and to get them to start walking. So economy, when you switch a whole engine down, you can't expect it to restart from where you left off. So you are likely to restart at 50, 60, 70%, and then slowly inch up. And that is going to create a lot of pain. So every institution has run its own models to arrive at what is a portfolio under stress, and provided for it in the last financial year itself, because the profits of the last year were good, and that absorbed whatever pain one could clearly see that is coming out of this.
So as you already mentioned about the restructuring happening, this reminds me of the RBI's one-time restructuring program which they announced for SMEs. And I could see that SBFC has been a good lender to SMEs as well. As you try to bring the financial inclusion, that's one of the major part you look into. So what is the broad expectation, the proportion of MSME loans that would come under the restructuring scheme, maybe by March 2021?
So one is that the scheme is available right now. We will have to sit down with each of the businesses to actually assess where, because we'll have to understand where the business is permanently damaged and cannot be revived back. and where the businesses are fine and with a little bit of help can bounce back. So first we'll have to differentiate the two and ensure that we don't give out more money in a black hole. That clearly is something that one would not do. So right now the reality is that we actually do not know to the actual extent, because normally what has happened is that when you look at a borrower, you look at the past behavior and take it as a proxy of the future. With this pandemic, what has happened is that no longer can you take past as a proxy of future. So we will have to sit with each borrower and reevaluate the borrower's business conditions, and reassess the borrower in terms of what would happen to the borrower in a revised scheme of things in a new normal that we are likely to see. And that is a process that will take time. So at the moment, any prediction one does is either out of fear or it is out of hope. It is not out of reality. But it would be safe to assume that somewhere between 10 to 15% of advances is where you may see this getting used.
All right. So coming to another segment, which is you also cater to, is gold loan. With the recent norm during the monetary policy, which RBI announced of increasing the LTV to 90% from 75%, but that is only for banks, however. How do you see this impact for the business of maybe NBFCs for this FY21? Do you see maybe a decline coming in?
So first of all, I think I personally think that such kind of regulatory arbitrages are not intended by the central bank. So I'm pretty sure that they may come out with a revised clarification that they did not intend to only make it banks. It should be applicable to banks and NBFCs, because the fact is that NBFCs are larger lenders to gold customers compared to banks. So one is that I don't expect this regulatory arbitrage to really play out. Central bank itself has been against regulatory arbitrages, in all its previous policies. So one is I see a realignment there very likely to happen. The second is that the intention of this is actually not to give out more money to the customer. The intention of the policy, as I read it, is to prevent the auction to happen of an existing customer. They are giving that much more time to the customer to repay the loan already taken, which is today finding it difficult to struggling to service. So they are trying to avoid auctions on gold jewelry and protect the poor customer from this particular instance playing out. Because if it was 75%, then the banks would already start auctioning out the property, the jewelry, if that limit is breached. But now with 90%, there is enough room left for banks to wait until that happens. But as they say, the pathway to hell is paved with great intentions. The contrary to this policy is that if banks start lending at 90% LTV, it is actually, in my opinion, not desirable,
Right.
because
Right.
gold has already rallied from 34,000 to 54,000, and this is not the time to lend a 90%, because a 10% correction in gold can happen at any point of time with this kind of a rally already behind it. And that would ensure that you are putting the customer to risk actually if you give him 90%. So
So are you
between
expecting
as
some
a
more
lender.
clarity maybe on the 90% side also? Because this is, as you said, it's not desirable. And ultimately, this will get into more of a dangerous situation wherein NPAs might increase in case, as you already mentioned, they are trying to give a room basically to prevent the auctions. It might happen the other way around.
See, gold is a product in which NPAs don't increase. Loss given default is nothing; it's zero. So effectively, what the risk is that the customer's auction, will happen sooner. So the customer may actually lose his jewelry sooner. Second is that if there is a big, like we have seen this cycle earlier in, I think it was 2011, 2012, when gold price had moved significantly up from 2008, and then it switched back. And when it switched back, you saw the kind of pain that went into the gold finance companies that were big then. And so this time, when at least the NBFCs are not yet part of it. But yes, it is. You are taking gold, after all, is not a fixed price commodity. It fluctuates, and when in any fluctuating, you need to have enough margin in a fluctuating commodity. And 75% is just about right. Anything more than that is actually putting the system at a little bit of a risk. While it's a
Right.
temporary measure, it's only there till 31st March. But nevertheless, it's not very recommended in my opinion.
Okay, great. So talking about the liquidity situation of the NBFCs at this moment, are they getting enough funds from the banks to lend? Or the recently which were announced in the last previous policies, TLTRO1, TLTRO2 schemes, which the tabs which are now currently closed. So will the banks be forthcoming in terms of, since the guarantees are also now not there? So do you see that lending still happening?
So one is that there was a since the ILFS crisis, there has been a tightening of liquidity available for NBFCs. So one is that the NBFCs have been put through a tight rigor on availability of bank finance over the last few months. So that was a trend that was playing out even before this crisis came in. And with this crisis, there was an immediate situation of liquidity because NBFCs have to refinance old debt, even if they don't are not borrowing new, they're not lending new loans. So therefore, they will need funds from time to time, and there was a situation of a little tightening of liquidity that had happened post the pandemic. TLTRO 1 and TLTRO 2 did not quite meet the objectives, and therefore the PCBs was what really hit the spot. And with the partial credit guarantees, I mean, the amount of funds that have actually come to NBFCs these days, if you actually look at the cash holdings of NBFCs, they are swimming in liquidity. So liquidity is actually not a problem anymore. Most of the NBFCs, even the lower rated NBFCs, are actually holding more than what they ideally need, just because it is available at the moment. So the kind of funds that have been made available have been sufficient. However, going forward, every NBFC will have to convince banks that they are safe, because now the PCB doesn't exist anymore, and it will go back to the old way of doing business. So it will depend now on each NBFC's standing, each NBFC's ability to manage its business, each NBFC's credit worthiness in the market, and each NBFC's bank's confidence in the NBFC's business model. So now credit, will be available, but will be available to players that deserve it.
Right. So maybe we can say maybe we are trying to move back to the ILFS, before the ILFS episode, wherein the investor confidence was pretty good. However, we just need to be careful on the credit worthiness of the NBFCs, right?
Yeah, so banks will watch in terms of what is happening post moratorium, how the post moratorium assets of the NBFCs are behaving, etc. So there will be, ultimately, now it is more about the business dynamics. The government cannot be constantly guaranteeing things. It did when it needed to, when there was a crisis. Now, their support has helped NBFCs manage the crisis. But now they'll have to manage their business, and give confidence to lenders based on the business that they are managing. So now they have to get
Right.
back to business as usual.
Perfect. So one more thing, are you seeing investors coming back to the securitization market as well in FY21?
So most securitization actually will wait till September, when the moratorium goes off, to actually kind of get a sense of what is happening, because the moratorium has been very confusing for most lenders, and it's been a little opaque in the sense that each lender has calculated moratoriums differently. Each lender has calculated collection efficiencies differently, because RBI had not given a standard definition of these calculations. So one is that there isn't sufficient clarity to the lenders on what exactly lies behind the hood of the moratorium. So once the moratorium opens up in September, and you get to business as usual, at that point of time, interest will return. Already, banks are discussing on possible securitization opportunities that they would like. Ultimately, it's a 2 trillion market a year in India. That for the last 2 years, that's the numbers that we have been seeing. And in reality, banks have had a very good experience with the securitization business usually. While there's a pause right now, it is a comma, it's not a full stop. The sentence will begin again in September.
Right. So one more thing, this reminds me from the NBFC situation and the securitization market. How is the co-lending model working these days? Is it getting more attraction again going forward? What are your views on that?
So, in my opinion, co-lending is an excellent model for NBFCs to work on, because it is an asset light and an ROE happy model. So it is a right model for an NBFC to. NBFC's weakness is its ability to draw liabilities, because it is a great asset engine, but has a weak liability franchise, because it borrows wholesale and lends retail. So to that extent, it is always dependent on wholesale funds. So if you create and while the strengths are to penetrate into different markets, the nimbleness to go into the depths of geography, to assess customers who are not yet in the full banking circles, and to then manage the credit cycle with those customers. So NBFCs have done a good job of that. And this co-lending model actually helps the NBFC overcome the biggest weaknesses it has in terms of the availability of funds and the cost of those funds. So these are the two big advantages one has. So SBFC, we have been doing this for the last 1 year, and almost 27% of our monthly business we co-originate. So this is something that has worked really well for us, and I'm pretty sure that while there are teething troubles, there are challenges that everyone faces because two organizations, two different credit streams, two different operation streams, not very easy to achieve. But what is good, ultimately people find a way to do it.
Right. So before we close this session, I want to just ask you one last question. I would like you to summarize what are the lessons that the NBFCs have learned in this liquidity crisis, and what have they done basically to avoid such a situation in the future.
So the when ILFS happened, NBFCs were caught on the wrong side of their own decision making. They were borrowing short and lending long, and they had created a well-known problem in the system, well understood problem in the system, and you could blame NBFCs for not realizing this, and not fixing it before the problem happened. However, this is not a problem that anybody could have foreseen or envisaged. So what we are seeing right now is an extraordinary situation that has never happened in the world as we know it before. So I mean, after the Spanish flu, almost 115 years later, something like this has visited us. So to that extent, you couldn't really blame NBFCs, for not doing something right. But what has clearly happened is that COVID, has done what it has done to the human body. It is doing now to balance sheets. So in the human body, when you get COVID, it depends on what are the other conditions that you have. If you have underlying weaknesses, whether it's a diabetes or a blood pressure or obesity, then the disease affects you a lot more. If you are healthy, then you may not even have a symptom and it may pass you by. Similarly, what is happening in balance sheets right now is that it is testing you. Wherever there is weakness, wherever there was an underlying problem, this has come by. So one, the key learning from ILFS was to ensure that you do not do this borrow short and long lend, kind of a model which is unstable. But on this crisis, it was not something that one could have seen. But one does realize that it is a very fragile business, the lending business, and conditions, whether they are created by you or whether they're created by the economy or whether they're created by viruses like this, will keep visiting from time to time. And as an NBFC, as a lender, we need to ensure that we keep our balance sheet healthy and strong, because a strong and healthy balance sheet can fight a weak P&L, but the reverse cannot happen. So one big lesson for NBFCs, in my opinion, in this crisis is that one will have to look at strengthening the balance sheet, reducing the level of leverage in the in the books, and ensuring that you have enough equity to support the borrowings that you have done, and to ensure that you have the repayment of your dues are happening on a consistent cycle rather than chunky repayments, bullet repayments coming up. So it is more disciplined treasury management that we will have to do from here.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for the amazing
Thank you.
session we had. It's always a
Thank you,
big
ma'am.
learning from you. Thank you on the behalf of Brickwork Ratings as well. We look forward to have more of your views in the future.
Thank
Thank
you
you
for
so
having me.
much.
Thank you.